con man once sold the Eiffel Tower. The crazy part isn't that someone actually bought it, it's that he sold it twice and walked away free both times. His name was Victor Lustig, and he might be the greatest con artist who ever lived. This is how he pulled off the most audacious scam in history. Twice. And somehow that wasn't even his boldest move. Let's start in Paris, 1925. Victor Lustig is sitting in a hotel reading the newspaper, and he stumbles across a small article most people would skip right past. It's about the Eiffel Tower. The city is having trouble paying to maintain it. The thing is rusting. It needs constant, expensive repairs. And here's the detail that makes Lustig's eyes light up. The tower was never even supposed to be permanent. It was built for the World's Fair in 1889 and originally meant to be torn down after 20 years. Most people read that and think, interesting. Lustig reads it and thinks, I'm going to sell that. Now, to understand how a human being even attempts this, you need to understand who Lustig was. He spoke 5 languages fluently. He was charming, impossibly smooth, and dressed like aristocracy. In fact, he often called himself Count Lustig, though he was no count at all. Over his career, he used around 45 different aliases. Lying wasn't something he did, it was who he was. So Lustig comes up with a plan. First, he has a forger create official government stationery. Letterhead from the French Ministry of Posts and Telegraphs, which back then was in charge of public property. With fake credentials in hand, he sends out secret, confidential invitations to 5 of the biggest scrap metal dealers in Paris. They arrive at the Hôtel de Crillon, one of the most prestigious hotels in the city, the kind of place that instantly makes everything feel legitimate. Lustig introduces himself as the Deputy Director General of the Ministry. And then he lowers his voice and tells them something that must never leave the room. The government, he says, has made a difficult decision. The Eiffel Tower is falling apart. It costs a fortune to maintain, and the city has secretly decided to tear it down and sell all 7,000 tons of iron for scrap. But, and this is why it's all so hush-hush, the public would be furious if word got out. So the sale has to be handled quietly, discreetly, by one trusted dealer. And just like that, the scam has a heartbeat. Because Lustig didn't just lie. He gave them a reason for the secrecy. The fear of public backlash explained why there were no announcements, no paperwork they could verify. Genius. He even takes them on a limousine tour of the tower to seal the illusion. And as he watches the 5 dealers, he zeroes in on one man, André Poisson. Poisson is the perfect mark. He's a bit of an outsider in the Paris business world, insecure, desperate to land a deal big enough to finally earn the respect of the city's elite. Lustig can smell it. But Poisson's wife is suspicious. Something about this mysterious official feels off. So Lustig pulls his masterstroke, the move that takes this from a good con to a legendary one. He arranges a private meeting with Poisson and confesses something. He admits that, as a poorly paid government official, life is hard and he would appreciate a little something extra to make sure Poisson wins the bid. In other words, Lustig asks for a bribe. And that's the moment Poisson stops doubting, because in his mind only a real corrupt official would ask for a bribe. A con man wouldn't dare. The very thing that should have screamed fraud instead convinced Poisson that all of it was completely real. So Poisson pays. He hands over the money for the Eiffel Tower, plus the bribe on top. And Victor Lustig gets on a train to Vienna with a suitcase full of cash. Now here's where the story becomes unbelievable. Lustig sits in Vienna reading the Paris newspapers every single day, waiting for the explosion, waiting for the headline, "Man tricked into buying the Eiffel Tower." And it never comes. Nothing. Silence. Because André Poisson was so humiliated and so utterly embarrassed that he'd been fooled into buying a national monument that he never went to the police. He just swallowed it and kept his mouth shut to protect his reputation. So Lustig realizes something incredible. Nobody knows. The crime was never even reported. So what does he do? He goes back to Paris. And he does the entire thing again. Same hotel, same speech, a brand new group of scrap metal dealers. The only reason it didn't pay off a second time is that this new mark got suspicious and went to the police before handing over the money. And Lustig caught wind of it and vanished before they could close in. So technically, Victor Lustig sold the Eiffel Tower 1.5 times, which is still 1.5 times more than anyone else in human history, and he walked away free for all of it. But here's the thing about Lustig. The tower wasn't even his masterpiece, because a couple of years later he decided to con one of the most dangerous men on the planet, Al Capone. As the story goes, Lustig went to Capone, the most feared gangster in America, and convinced him to hand over $50,000 for a stock deal. Then Lustig simply held onto the money for 2 months. Did nothing with it. And when he came back, he returned every single dollar, apologizing that the deal had fallen through. Capone was stunned. A criminal who gave the money back? He was so impressed by Lustig's apparent honesty that he handed him $5,000, just as a reward for being so trustworthy. Which, of course, was the plan all along. Lustig never intended to invest a cent. The entire scheme was built to walk away with Capone's cash by being the one con man who looked too honest to be a crook. His everyday hustle was a little device he called the Romanian box, a small wooden box he claimed could duplicate money. Put in a $100 bill, wait 6 hours, and out came 2. He'd sell the box for a fortune using a few real bills hidden inside, and be long gone before his victims realized it never made another cent. His luck finally ran out in the 1930s when he got pulled into a massive counterfeiting operation in the United States, pumping out so much fake cash that authorities feared it could shake confidence in the dollar itself. He was finally arrested. And even then, he wasn't done. The day before his trial, Lustig escaped from a federal jail in Manhattan by tying bedsheets together, climbing out a window and, when people on the street looked up, pretending to be a window cleaner, calmly wiping the glass as he lowered himself down. He was free for a month before they caught him again. This time there was no charming his way out. Victor Lustig was sentenced to 20 years and sent to Alcatraz. He died there in 1947 of pneumonia. On his death certificate, his occupation was listed as apprentice salesman. One last little joke from the man who sold the Eiffel Tower. Twice, Lustig even left behind a list he called the 10 Commandments for Con Men. Rules like be a patient listener, never look bored, never discuss your own troubles. Because his real product was never the tower or the box or the stock deal. It was trust. He sold people the feeling that they could believe him. And that turned out to be the most valuable and most dangerous thing of all. So the next time someone offers you a deal that's too good to be true, secret, urgent, and just needs a little something on the side to make it happen, remember André Poisson. Remember that the most convincing liars don't look like liars at all. They look like a count reading the newspaper, deciding to sell you a tower. If you want more stories about the boldest cons and characters in history, subscribe to... There are plenty more where this came from, and the next one is waiting right here. See you next time.